Some people been out saying, oh, well, you see, you basing it about color. No, it's just a fact. If color don't matter, don't get mad when you find out they black. If it don't matter, because it don't. It's just the way it is. So now, Moses was mistaken as Egyptian. Now people say, well, you know, well, they was black back then, but now they look different. Look, however you look in the beginning, that's how you look. Nations have not changed color throughout time. That has never been. Whatever the Italian looked like when he was born into this world in the beginning, when God started the Italian race, that's how the Italian look to this day. Don't change. You don't change. They ain't going to change and be a black people one day. That ain't going to happen. Ethiopians will never one day turn into white. Now, you know, you might have a famous Ethiopian. They might lie to you someday and tell you he was white, but that'd just be a lie. Just like I wonder one day if they'd change and say Michael Jackson looked different, Michael Jordan looked different. I don't know. But the bottom line is people don't really change. What they look like in the beginning, that's how they look. Now, let's go to the New Testament. All the way to years later, another Israel. Now, he's from a different tribe, but all the tribes were the same color. Acts 21. Acts 21. And we're going to pick it up at verse 37. Acts 21 and verse 37. Again, it's important to identify Israel because Jesus said himself he was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. Acts 21 and verse 37. Now, this is Apostle Paul. Let's see who he was mistaken as. Now, this is 1,000 years later from Moses' time. But he's an Israelite, a different tribe, but still he's Israelite. He's from Jacob, just like Moses was. Paul was from Benjamin, which was the youngest son who Jacob left at home when he sent the 10 brothers up there. Moses was from Levi. But now, Acts 21 and verse 37. Go ahead.
And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Canst thou speak Greek?
Go ahead.
Art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days madest an uproar and leddest out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers?
See, now this guy mistake Paul for an Egyptian. But that means Israel have to look like the Egyptians, same color-wise, to keep being mistaken for one. So Paul was not an Egyptian. Paul was an Israelite, which at this time they called them all Jews. Because the 10 tribes was enslaving, and Judah was the only faction, the main faction left. So they called them Jews, but still, the man said, Art not thou that Egyptian, which did some stuff that I heard about. But Paul gonna tell him, he was not Egyptian. But that shows you, just like Moses, Paul got mistaken for an Egyptian. But what did Paul say? Verse 39.
But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew.
See, Paul would say, I'm a Jew. But that means the Jew or Israel got to look like the Egyptians, don't he? See, we just comparing apples with apples. Moses was called an Egyptian in the old days. We know the Egyptians come from Ham, right? We got artifacts of Egypt. I'm telling you, they would tell you these were dug up out of tombs. They dug this out of King Tut's tomb they found in 1921. Tutankhamun, that's an image of him and his wife. He was real young, teenager, but he was the Pharaoh. This came out of tomb. So if this is how the Egyptians look, these are all artifacts that was dug out of tombs that was in this Reader's Digest Bible, and Reader's Digest did it in 1961. And they said when they printed this Bible with all these pictures in it, they said, we're going to show you how the Bible really look. That's what they said in the preface. We're going to show you how it really looks. They said, yeah, we got some pretty pictures that people painted, but they really didn't. They're not accurate. They don't give you an accurate idea. We're going to give you a real idea from artifacts. And that's what they did. They printed this Bible. So now, if Moses looked like an Egyptian and Paul looked like Egyptian, that's telling you Israel looked like Egyptians. Go ahead.
But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Sicily, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people.
See, Paul was in trouble because they didn't like what he was preaching. They had him hemmed up and he trying to speak. But the man called, he said, you are Egyptian. But that showed you had to look like. Now go back to the Old Testament. Jeremiah, the 4th chapter, Lamentations of Jeremiah. Right after Jeremiah, Lamentations of Jeremiah. The 4th chapter. Because we're going to read some other stuff, because remember, we got to get to Israel being cursed. We got to get to the part where God said he's going to punish Israel. Because God ended up punishing us, and that's how we can identify which black people are Israel. We can identify them. It's only one way, and it's by the curse. That's why the title is Israel Black and Cursed by God. Period. Lamentations 4 and verse 6. This when God was starting to punish Israel. A lot of them had went into slavery at this time. See, that's the thing you can find out about Israel. Israel is constantly mentioned with going into slavery. Well, this during Jeremiah's time, that's when it was starting. They was on their way out. Lamentations 4 and 6. Go ahead.
For the punishment of the iniquity of the daughters of my people is greater than the punishment of the sins of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hand stayed on her.
See, now look. He said, the punishment of my people, of the iniquity of the daughter of my people, is greater than the punishment of Sodom that was overthrown in the morning, because Israel being getting punished for years. So he's talking about the punishment of his people. Well, go ahead, verse 7.
Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than ruby. Their polishing was as sapphire.
Okay, now he talked about the Nazarites. I'm going to move this up. Make sure people can kind of get a little glimpse, but you can look at it all afterwards. But now he said, look, her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. That's talking about in righteousness. He's not talking about this, the complexion of them now. But he's talking about Israel. Israel had Nazarites. Samson was a Nazarite with 7 locks. Her Nazarites were pure as snow, they were whiter than milk. But then he said they were more ruddy in body. So ruddy is a dark red complexion. That's how they looked in color. In other words, things were going good. They had good complexions. Things was going well. They were righteous. They were more ruddy in body. Their polishing was of sapphire. See, that's dark skin. But now, when they got in trouble with God, God made something else happen to them. When they got sick with disease and famine, what did he say happened in verse 8?
Their visage is blacker than a coal.
He said, see what happened to them? Their visage, that's their appearance now, is blacker than a coal. Go ahead.
They are not known in the street. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick.
See, now notice he said when they got in trouble, they got blacker than a coal. That's amazing. You blacker than a coal. Coal is straight black, right?
Yes, sir.
But the bottom line is, brothers and sisters, I'm just showing you that Israel got to be black in the first place to ever be pronounced blacker than a coal. You would never, we got Gentiles in here, which this don't have nothing to do with race. You would never, none of the Gentiles in here, you would never, ever, ever, ever have an occasion to say they got blacker than a coal. That won't happen, will it? But if you are already black, see, this is what happened to black people. See, a Gentile might get sick and get a disease. They might become pale. But a black person, in a lot of cases, I've seen it, when they get sick, they get darker. I've seen that happen. I done been to the hospital to visit people. I didn't even recognize them no more. They had cancer. I didn't even recognize them. They got so dark, the whole appearance changed. So that's what will happen with a dark-skinned people, and that's what he's telling you happened to Israel. But you got to be black in the first place to ever be pronounced blacker than a coal. Got to be. But now go to the 5th chapter, 5 and verse 10. 5 and verse 10, because he's going to say something again. Go ahead.
Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine.
See, now because of the terrible famine, their skin became black like an oven. But you got to be black in the first place. You got to be a dark skin. You got to be a dark-skinned race of people to ever be pronounced black like an oven. So that shows you again, not to mention how they've been compared to the Egyptians, which are black people, come from Ham. We just saw that. Now we seeing that they even been called, when disease and famine set in, blacker than a coal and blacker than an oven. Now, go to Deuteronomy 28, because that's enough on color per se. Because the question still should be, well, how do I know Israel? If you tell me Israel is black, how do I know them for any other blacks? Well, you're going to know Israel from all the other black nationalities, because there's a whole lot of them. We got a whole lot of Hamite black nationalities. These are black people up here. King Tut was black, but he wasn't Israel. He was an Egyptian. You got a whole lot of black nationalities. How do you know Israel? Because they got cursed by God. And by God. See, that's why when you understand this, you don't get mad at a man. That's why we don't blame. We ain't talking about the white man did this. See, the white man, it's the white. Look, it can't be the white man's fault if God run it. Ain't no need to even blame nobody. So it ain't even about trying to blame. It's recognizing the facts and what God is doing. That's what we hear. We reading all of this in the Bible still. Deuteronomy 28. Now we're going to get to the curse. We saw Israel is important to God. Jesus said he was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. We didn't compare to Israel and show that Israel is black like the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, etc. But now how are we going to identify which black people they are from among all these black people? Because Israel had to be cursed. And don't even have their identity no more. Don't even know who they are. See, that's a mystery. You're going to have Black History Month, and when Black History Month, when March comes, you still ain't going to have no history about yourself. You still ain't going to know who you are and where you from. You know, at least Malcolm X, he at least tried to acknowledge he didn't know who he was. He said, well, that's why I got the X, because we don't know who we are. Well, we can fill the X in now, because we know. But you got to be somebody. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 1. This is what God said to Israel by Moses when he brought them out of slavery in Egypt. Because that's what Moses did. He brought this black people out from among the black Egyptians who was oppressing them, and he got ready to take them to the promised land. 28 and 1. Go ahead.
And it came to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. See, now that's the key to being blessed by God to this day, being obedient to him. You can know about this lesson, but if you don't be obedient to God, it ain't going to mean nothing to you. It ain't going to matter in the long run. God going to still deal with you. So that's the key to all of it. He said, it shall come to pass if you obey the voice of the Lord thy God to observe and do his commandments, that I command thee, that he going to bless you. Now he's talking to Israel as a nation, how he's going to bless them. That's what this is about. But now he going to tell you the flip side, because where there's a possibility for you to be blessed, there's a possibility for you to be cursed. And we don't want to acknowledge that. We want to act like it's all about being blessed and like cursing is not a possibility. Look, you need to deal with reality. If you can be blessed, if the same God that can bless you, he can curse you too. So you need to do what's necessary to stay away from the curse. See, Job understood that, even though God was just testing Job. But Job understood that when God brought all that drama on him by Satan, Job told his wife, he said, look, his wife got upset. He told his wife, he said, look, we're going to take the good from God, but we can't take the bad. He said, you was happy when God gave you the good stuff. Look, hey, deal with the bad stuff now. You got to deal with all of it. So just like God can bless you, he can curse you. And he promised this people, the chosen people Israel, that he would curse them if they disobeyed him. That's what he's going to do here. Verse 15. Read that now. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
See, this in the Bible for a reason. He said, if you disobey me, just like I told you I was going to bless you for obeying, if you disobey me, woe unto you, because I'm going to hurt you bad. That's what God's saying. God is telling the people this. So it must be important. He said, I will curse you for disobeying me. And I'm going to name some curses, and they're going to be on you like white on rice. He's going to tell you. Skip down to, now go ahead and read verse 16.
Curse shall thou be in the city, and curse shall thou be in the field.
See, now we can't read all this. It's a long chapter, but he's telling Israel, you're going to be cursed everywhere you at. You're going to be cursed in Mississippi. That's the field. That's the country. And you think you're going to leave and go up north and there ain't going to be no cursing? No, you're going to be cursed in the city. You're going to be cursed in the field.